do some sketchy shit. Do-da, do-da, hope I get away with it. Oh, do-da-day.
Well, welcome to Last Man Standing. I'm Dan Hollifield. Uh, I really don't think this is going to be a last man standing because at this point in time, I'm the only one here, and I do not intend to monologue for 2 hours. So, probably just going to mention a few things, play a couple of commercials, and then roll the end credits. Um, it's not like I'm getting paid to do this. The only reason I do it's because I enjoy the company of the other people on the stream with me. And right now, everyone else is either not feeling well or just sleepy and um, gone to bed. John and I did Stupid O'Clock by ourselves tonight. Joe Dog was tired. Dawn had had a rough day and was having a little bit of pain, so she went to bed early. Uncle Carl was there through most of the show in the chat, uh, and thank you very much. And finally, he got past his bedtime, so he said goodnight. Aunt Donna decided she was going to have an early night because she wasn't feeling 100% either. And Joe Bachman was not feeling 100%. He'd had a long, hard day trying to clean up the park after a bunch of people that left the expired remains of fireworks all over the park, which had to be cleaned up. He's part of a committee that cares for that particular park. So, hey, got responsibilities, got to take care of them, but wore him out too. No big deal. It's not like there's a contractual obligation to put out a 2-hour show every time. I don't mind. Um I don't mind monologuing for a little bit. Uh, Actually, on my own, uh, I know I'm saying an awful lot. I wish I could stop that. That's one of those uh, speech impediments that you get warned about in public speaking courses. So I shall try and avoid that as strenuously as I am able. I do kind of use empty phrases like that to consolidate my feces for the next thought that I think is presentable to the public. Public speaking is one of those things where uh, you kind of, it's a learned skill. It's not something that you are tending to be excellent at the first time you attempt it. There's an awful lot of practice involved. It's a learned skill. So basically, you start off being all nervous and your voice is quavery, and you're thinking about all the people that would be watching and whether or not you're going to bore them to tears or, as you hope, enthrall them with whatever it is that your topic is at that time. And you're really hoping that you are enthralling rather than boring, although I've never had any trouble being either. Uh, I'm not the world's most interesting man, but I can kind of wing it for a little bit. See, last week I was at LibertyCon, came in to Stupid O'Clock on Thursday night, and I did not have. Oh, and Grant Lankard is watching now. Hello, Grant. I came into Stupid O'Clock, and the hotel Wi-Fi was a little bit sluggish, and my laptop is not the greatest in the world. Oh, hello, Nick. Nick is here too. Uh, um, I stayed for a little while. My wife wanted to go to bed, and the camera was pointed right at me with the bed in the background, and she would have been uncomfortable sleeping on camera. So I said my good nights and went downstairs and partied with a bunch of my uh, fellow writers and artists and wild and crazy people that attend LibertyCon. Had a great time. Had an absolutely great time. I was on at least one panel every day, sometimes two. Even was the moderator of a steampunk panel, which was interesting because I had never met the other people that were on the panel. I was not even familiar with their work. So that was great becoming acquainted with them and knowing that I need to look them up and check out what they do. Steampunk is one of those things everybody thinks, well, not everybody, but a lot of people think it's passe now. It's not. It's not. It's still very much a lifestyle and an artistic expression that is every bit as live and vibrant as goth or SCA or Ren Fair or anything else where there is a dedicated fandom to be had. And these folks are writing from what they described in the panels, really interesting books, really interesting stories. And I had a great time with them. See what other panels was I on? Oh, with um, the Sunday morning coffee clutch, where all the pros sit down at a table with a cup of coffee and a donut or a Danish, and folks kind of circulate around and sit and spend a little time asking you questions and you asking them questions. It's kind of uh, it's kind of a meet and greet, but it's a little bit more involved. Not a lot, but a little bit. There was one year when I was sitting at a table with Stephanie Osborne and a fellow who was a forensic fire inspector. Basically, he did uh, causes and after effects of building fires. I'm not building a fire, but fires in buildings. And she and I learned at least three new ways apiece to undetectively murder someone from the point of view of someone who examines fire evidence forensically. One of those involved piping certain gases into an air conditioning unit in, say, a rooftop air conditioning unit to a certain location in a building or the entire building if you've got enough of this particular chemical, or a home air conditioner like a window unit or backyard unit. There are ways that you can use these things as weapons. It was frightening. It was also enlightening. I think Stephanie might have used one of them in one of her books already. Um, I have the ones that particularly tickled my fancy filed away for an emergency, which I hope never arises. Oh, yeah. Oxygen displacing gases are terrifying. Yes, there are others that combine with uh, the compression and circulation process of an air conditioner that pretty much are as absolutely horrifying as anything that was used against people in World War II, and in some cases even more. And it turned out technically pumping something in through an air conditioner unit to kill somebody inside does not take an awful lot of equipment. You just had to know your chemistry. Ah, yeah. Oh, Nick, it's funny what one learns as a janitor. Believe me, I once came home from work and my second wife was trying to clean the grease off of the stovetop using a mix of Clorox and ammonia. Needless to say, I turned on the attic fan and opened every door and window in the house because I know enough chemistry to know what that makes. I am surprised the lady survived as long as she did. She had about as much of a preservation instinct as a newborn puppy. She had no idea that you don't mix those together ever, especially in an enclosed space. Uh, no. Anyway, good thing I got home from work in time. Uh, oh dear. Uh, cleaning a very nasty toilet in your first home. Yes. That would be one of those things where people would think, "Oh, it's going right down the drain. It's not going to do anything." They fail to realize that chlorine gas actually does boil out. But thankfully, I do believe chlorine is heavier than air, somewhat like carbon monoxide, sticks to the floor. Yeah, on the plus side, the whole place was fumigated in just a few hours. Yes, indeed. Uh, I'm sure you had some highly surprised termites and cockroaches somewhere around that house. Uh, Nick, your typing is getting truncated here. I know you're continuing it on to more, but uh, look like something from a Toxic Avenger movie. Yep, I can well believe. I can well believe. Uh, I actually paid strict attention to chemistry classes in high school and college. Uh, it, really, the ones in college taught me a lot, but then there were all sorts of other things in classic mystery books, as well as reading up on uh, things that were mentioned in uh, OSHA training classes at the factory. They told you a lot of horror stories about things that people did that they should not have done, and some of them did not walk away ever. Mm. My hands have oil from cleaning his neck knife and it keep triggering the send. So yeah, nope. Don't. Yeah, no. Um, I once had to. I was at a convention and somebody was making fun of a door that had a confined space sign on it, and I went full OSHA on them. I told them, if that has a sign that says confined space, do not enter, that's because something in there behind that door can kill you dead quickly. They do not put those signs up because they're funny. They don't put those signs up because it's something you can joke about. It's a dangerous thing. Do not go in there unless you are a maintenance person with the proper personal protective equipment, or a first responder with the proper protective equipment. What probably it was a electrical switch room, and there was a lot of places where somebody could actually accidentally brush against high voltage breakers and connectors and whatnot and get a severe shock. We had one safety briefing at work that showed a breaker box on the wall, and right below it was the scorched outline of somebody's shoes where they did not safely know how to turn off a particular breaker or touched a wire or did something. Another one was a fuse box in a home that had improvised fuses, a nail, no possibility of it ever melting, so overcurrent, house would burn down. What was another one? Oh, um, a rifle cartridge. I gather that would have been an early warning system if that one had an overcurrent and that particular improvised breaker popped. It would probably be very, very loud and throw shrapnel around the room as it burst the door open for the breaker box. Uh, People putting pennies on the old style screw in fuses and putting those in, and then wondering why they had to have the house rebuilt 6 months later. Uh, Confined spaces can be very dangerous. And some of them are confined spaces because there's only one way in, and there is the possibility of some oxygen displacing gas, as Nick mentioned, flooding that area. And if you don't have a scuba suit, you're not going to have any air to breathe and you're going to fall over and you may die. And so might anybody that tries to rush in and rescue you without an oxygen supply, like a scuba outfit. I don't mean the wetsuit and everything, but the tank and the mask. Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus works just as well above water as underwater. Uh, Firefighters carry stuff where they can breathe in hot conditions and smoky conditions and uh, oxygen deprived conditions. Uh, oh yeah. NASA alcohol fire testing procedure. Yeah, yeah, indeed. Train cars and tankers carrying that stuff. Yeah, there's people do not really notice, or most people do not really notice the hazardous stuff that is all around their environment every day, day in and day out. There might be you get caught by a morning train. You're sitting there at the train crossing. You never actually can read the labels on the train cars as they go by because they're going by too fast. If it's going by slow enough, you can. And some of the warning signs would pretty much frighten the nads off the Marquis de Sade. I mean, some of that stuff is rather dangerous. Uh, Factory used to get a tanker truck of refrigerated ammonia for topping off the tank of a rather sizable refrigeration unit out way out on one of the far corners of the factory property. That thing was usually a foot thick in frost during July. So you know it was cold. All you really needed was that thing running and some humidity in the surrounding air, and it looked like the Titanic's worst nightmare. Just a huge iceberg sitting there with aluminum fins sticking out. So, yeah, kind of like a sci fi movie. But not only was that stuff dangerous because it was ammonia, and ammonia is a bit corrosive, but because it was highly refrigerated. It was refrigerated enough for a room temperature gas to become liquid. This is one of those cases where you really would be better off keeping your distance while these things were being transferred from the truck to the tank that contained the reserve stuff. Uh, got bored and started looking up the diamond-shaped warning signs on trucks. Some were spooky. Refrigerator trucks and tankers, yes, yeah, are something you give a wide berth to. That and assorted silos, yes, indeed. Uh, I tend to stay away from silos just because a certain concentration of many different varieties of dust in the air can become explosive with a mere static flash. Grain silos go up all the time, just boom, just because of the dust off of the whatever the grain happens to be. Uh, Chemical silos, even if it's something that seems innocuous, that critical level of fine particulate dust in the air makes it about as safe to be around as an unexploded bomb from the Blitz in London. You just, mm, these things, you just kind of, once you know these things exist and what the dangers are, you want to stay away. Yeah. Uh, Silos behind my house spook me. Yeah. Flour, for example. Yes. A lot of people do not realize flour as a dust in the air has a comparative explosive power to nitroglycerin. And it's just flour. It's ground wheat, but it's the dust that's the thing that blows up. Not the pile of it in the silo. It's what gets stirred up and floats around in the air. Uh, I was working at one place before I went to the glass factory. It made wooden soft drink crates and repaired pallets. And I worked in the room with all the really dangerous saws and planers and edgers and things like that. And there was a day when someone was cleaning the printers that they used to paint soft drink names on the sides of the parts for the crates. And they were using mineral spirits to clean this off. And they thought, hey, mineral spirits, it's about like diesel fuel. You can throw a lit cigarette in there and it'll just put it out. Not once it vaporizes to a certain extent. It's two guys cleaning this stuff up. They got wet rags everywhere, wet with mineral spirits. Basically, really, really, really like kerosene, jet fuel. And this was the 70s, and there weren't any no smoking signs anywhere. One of them lit up a cigarette, and the entire painting room blew up with them inside. While our boss was on the phone trying to get to calling an ambulance. They ran out covered in paint, just barely not on fire, but still kind of smoldering. And I got them in the back seat of my car, and I drove them to the closest emergency room I could get to. Told my boss, tell the ambulance I've got it. We're on the way. Um, I basically did break 0.5 past light speed all the way down a highway. Uh, got them there. Got them in. Doctors were taking care of them there in the emergency room. Nobody had any cell phones back then. They didn't exist except for, the big bricks. Uh, Suddenly the boss showed up, told me to go on back to work. Found out the next day if we'd waited on the ambulance to drive out there and then drive them to the hospital, both of them would have been blind. Because I decided I was going to reenact Smokey and the Bandit before it ever came out. I got them to the emergency room in time for both of them to have their eyesight saved. I've usually reacted quite well in emergency situations. I do know when to wait for the experts. I do know when to take matters in my own hand and grab a fire extinguisher and try and keep things under control until the experts show up. And then there are times when I just go, I don't know what it is I got to do, but I got to do it right now. Hop in the car, let's go. Yeah, it looked like I froze for a second because I had to pause for a thought. I do that frequently in real life. I do just kind of, well, one of my rest states is looking like I'm lost in meditation or something like that. It's just, this is one of those situations where nobody expected anything to happen. It was, at the time, unpredictable. With hindsight, it was very predictable. There just weren't that many safety rules back then. They should have known better than to be lighting a cigarette in a room full of paint thinner fumes, but they didn't. And I happened to be the one that was quickest on the middle uptake at the time. Two-way trip, ambulance out, ambulance back would have taken too much time. I'm already there. I got a 300 horsepower Chevy. Let's go. I never got some of the red paint on the back seat off of the upholstery in the car. It's all right. I didn't care. They're good guys. Uh, I got them. I got them where they needed to go in time. Uh, yeah, there are lots and lots of things that, were I to write a biography, There'd be about 10% of it nobody would ever believe. And the other 90% would put people to sleep, so I'd never be able to read the 10% that was unbelievable. Thank you, Nick. I like to think so. I like to think so. But I just do what I can do, and I'm you know, I'm just a farmer. There's a lot of stuff you can do in life to mitigate risks. No, I'm not entirely too humble. I am exactly as humble as I need to be. I'm just me. Sometimes I do extraordinary things, but that's not something I would feel comfortable about bragging. It's just, you know, it's like the time I was down in Tallulah Gorge and um, I was on a camping trip by myself, and there's a junior college close by, and the kids would come down on the weekends in the afternoon, and they'd go down to what they call the sliding rock, which is basically a very, very, very gentle waterfall. It's kind of like a water slide in a water park. You know, sit down, slide, let the current push you on down to a large pool at the bottom, splash. Everybody has a good time. One young lady decided to go down face first, scraped her chin raw. I was the only one in the entire canyon that had a first aid kit. Cleaned her up, got the bleeding stopped, taped some gauze in place, told her friends to get her up the hill. It was 1,100 feet up the hill, a very steep hill at that point. Get her to an emergency room. She might need stitches. That's beyond my pay grade. I can't do that. Don't know whatever happened. Uh, but I was the only one there with a first aid kit. It's because I always carried a first aid kit when I went camping because I always wind up getting hurt. Usually it's no worse than a stubbed toe, but sometimes you wind up with a piece of broken glass you didn't see when you're walking and you cut your foot open. Yep. Um, well, there have been times when I was not anywhere around, and I wish I had been, but the universe is perverse that way. That's the reason why there are so few real life superheroes. Firefighters, cops, military, uh, good Samaritan that stops to render aid when they see a need. Most of the time, you're nowhere near where you need to be when something happens when you could have helped. Most of the time. Sometimes the universe cooperates and you are Johnny on the spot. And if everybody is really lucky, you've got whatever gear is necessary to deal with that particular level of whatever emergency is that your skills cover. But a lot of the time, there's nothing you can do. You are nowhere nearby. It's just out of your hands. And you can't feel guilty about that because you can't be everywhere at once. You can't do everything at once. You can't be Superman. So when there's an emergency that you can't respond to in no way, shape, or form, it's just not physically possible. No matter the human impulse to feel guilty because you could have done something, but you were not there. There was no way for you to be there. It's not physically possible. You can't let yourself feel guilty about that. Sure, if you'd been there, you might have been able to do something, but you weren't there. That's no fault of yours. It's actually no fault of the universe. It just things happen. And sometimes the things that happen are totally beyond your control. Most of the time, the things that happen are totally beyond your control. Sometimes they're totally beyond your ability to effectively react to. And you shouldn't feel guilty about that either. Not everybody is trained to be an EMT, a fireman, a first responder. You want to do something, but chances are you're just going to be another casualty if you do. You can't do everything. You can't be everywhere. But you can do what you are able in the circumstances where you are present. Oh, hey, Rob. Yeah, sci-fi writers. Don't forget sci-fi writers. Yeah, indeed. Uh, Fully understand those. Yeah, uh, when when you're not anywhere, but you could have done something if you'd been there, but you weren't there, and it's not your fault. Hey, Nick, you are definitely an unsung hero in certain circumstances we do not need to go into because that's your life and your privacy. But you have done a lot more than you give yourself credit for too. And apparently there are times when circumstances conspired against you and somewhere you weren't would not have turned out as it did if you had been. Circumstances completely out of your control. You can't be everywhere at once. You can't do everything at once. And some people make really horrible choices. And you can't tell them to stop. You can't tell them, wait a minute, think this over. You can't be there to be that calming voice or whatever it is that's needed. Here's a band-aid, you know. You you're just not able to be there. You're someplace else. Oh, good Lord. Had to rush back home on the only day you left the house because Amanda managed to kick a machete barefoot. She is okay, but the drive down was a bit of a blur. Yeah, I don't doubt it. This is the woman you love, the mother of your child. You're going to go into full on get out of my way. Uh, I believe I wrote a piece of music about that. Rush hour traffic, don't get in my way. Uh, Thankfully, I didn't have to write lyrics. Only leave the house alone about once a month. Nick, I understand. Um, since we got rear-ended by that teenager that was on his cell phone back in 2007, Lindsay's been pretty much PTSD about driving. So I've had to be the chauffeur. She's gotten much better. She has a comfort zone within this county. She will not leave this county and go to the next one because traffic is much heavier there. But inside this county, she can go anywhere. She's getting more comfortable. She's getting her confidence back. That's fine. That's great. I try and make sure that anytime I leave the house and she's here, I got my cell phone. Sometimes I forget. I haven't been carrying all the gear that I used to carry back when I was working. And just kind of pared it down to wallet and keys, and if I can remember my cell phone, I'll take it. There are places she wants to go, she's afraid to drive to, so I drive her. There are places she wants to go that she's totally comfortable driving to, and I'm the one left at the house while she goes off. And she's fine. She's absolutely perfect. You know, she's as safe and as confident as she ever was in this comfort zone. It does seem a bit of a shame that this one kid ruined about 10 years of her life, keeping her as housebound as if she were severely agoraphobic. But as time passed and her confidence has been returning, she's gotten much more self-assured, which I love to see. I really love to see. I mean, she should not have to depend on me for everything. She should be self-sufficient. Everybody should be able to be self-sufficient within their means. Uh, yes, there are uh, medical and psychological circumstances which would hinder someone being self-sufficient. But that is also part of life. I do know people that have gone through a traumatic experience and they're afraid to leave the house. I know people who've gone through traumatic experiences and they saddle that horse back up and ride it out anyway, no matter how terrified they are. And there's nothing wrong with either one. I mean, there's nothing to be judgmental about either one. People are infinitely variable. Our own personal strengths and weaknesses are, as individuals, our fingerprints, actually. But it's almost a crime to judge someone who can't do something because of a fear, a phobia, PTSD, or whatever. That's wrong on so many levels. Until you've been in those situations, you really don't have a right to be smug and self-righteous about even casually looking down on somebody that suffers from something you may or may not understand, but is so very real to them, so very intense to them. Uh, I suffer from a fear of crowds. Uh, Going Christmas shopping at a major department store terrifies me. Public speaking terrifies me. What am I doing? I'm sitting here on camera talking to the entire planet, or at least the 4 people that are watching me now, or the 68 people that might watch me later on in the replay, and I'm pontificating as if I actually know my elbow from a hole in the ground. Uh, why am I able to do that? I'm a stubborn bugger. I try not to allow the limitations I know actually exist on me to dictate the rest of my life. by rights, I should probably be considered agoraphobic and not ever wanting to leave the house. I'm basically a hermit, but my cave is very comfortable, thank you. I think I need to turn the air conditioning back on. It's starting to get warm in here again. But, yeah, uh, I went through a lot of stuff during school where I was really uncomfortable with being noticed for any reason, having to be the center of anybody's attention. Yet I wound up in the marching band, and I wound up being in a couple of school plays, and I wound up being called on to do uh, different presentations in safety stuff at the factory, all the safety meetings. I got really bored with being the only one that would actually speak up and answer the questions so we could get this over with. So I'd sit there and I would adopt my most bored tone and answer the questions until the other folks go, "Hey, he's not the smartest person in the room, but he remembers what everything was from the last safety briefing. So this is the answer you want. This is the answer. Uh, I'd like to sit here and be quiet and just drink my coffee and eat my sausage and egg biscuit and get this over with as quickly as possible. But y'all ain't saying nothing. So somebody got to. You go through 4 decades of that, you get a little less uncomfortable about being on panels at sci-fi conventions and sitting there doing exactly what I'm doing now, talking about this, that, the other thing. Avoid the subjects you don't know anything about, but defer those to somebody that does. It's a learned skill. And it's a bit, I may be coining a word here, chameleonic, protective coloration. You're intensely uncomfortable, yet you hide that by being uh, talkative and seeming comfortable when you are not. It's it's another part of life, just like anything else. In essence, it's no different than learning how to use a fire extinguisher correctly, or learning how to drive, or in my case, learning to avoid rush hour traffic in Atlanta. There was a time when I would ride my motorcycle to Atlanta and be in rush hour traffic and not feel uncomfortable. I was having fun. I was going to a bookstore. I was going to a friend's house. I was going to uh, an event or a party or something. No problem. Finally got to a point to where Atlanta traffic got really dangerous. I mean, really, really dangerous. And I decided I would avoid it as much as possible from now on. Doesn't mean I can't leave the house. It just means I navigate around Atlanta to go someplace that normally you'd go through Atlanta to get to the road you need to get to your destination. But then that's one of those other things about life. Sometimes you need to learn how to bypass the things that are frightening and upsetting and keep you from putting yourself in what is clear and present danger in order to do something ordinary. I want to drive to Hallowcon. I want to drive to Chattanooga to LibertyCon. I go around Atlanta. I don't go through it. Not anymore. I've done it. I can do it. Uh, I'd be more comfortable if I weren't so protective of Lindsay and know that she will freak out over near misses in interstate traffic, high speed, rush hour, bumper to bumper garbage, basically. Yeah, I could do it myself. I'm being perhaps overly protective, but protective nonetheless of my wife. And if I can relieve stresses on her, I will. Plus, taking the back roads, you get to see a lot of stuff you wouldn't see before. There are a lot of little shops and antique stores and things like that you never knew would exist if you'd taken the direct fast route to get where it was you were going. When I was a kid, my family would go out for what was basically termed a Sunday drive. No particular destination in mind, just out exploring the local roads and just cruise around and wave at the people that were sitting on their porch in rocking chairs or somebody on their tractor or whatever, uh, and get to know different ways to get to different places, and that there were places that if you stuck to the main roads you'd never know existed. Little out of the way shops and uh, antique stores and junk stores and all kinds of things, little touristy traps, you know. I mean, obviously tourist traps, but they were cute and kitschy and interesting. People can't afford to do that nowadays because of the price of gas, but back in the day, it was not unheard of to go through a $5 tank of gas just out driving around in the countryside. Yeah, Nick, you're right. Simple fun as a concept is being lost. It's not lost on everybody, but economic hardships are now part of our life. Doesn't matter who you are. A dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, and it never will again. Gas is never going to be 12 cents a gallon anymore. And yes, I am old enough to remember 12 cents a gallon for gas. A meal for a family of 4 at a roadside restaurant is never going to be under $10 again. Those days are gone. They're long gone. You'd be lucky if you can get a meal for one person for under $10 nowadays, anywhere. Even if it's just some roadside hole in the wall that you really decide you're never going to go back to again, but oh, those French fries are good. The world is different. I'm not going to say it's worse. I'm not going to say the good old days, because, the good old days weren't all that good. As the song says, thank you. I've forgotten about that lyric. Billy Joel was right. The good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow's not as dark as it seems, or bright as it seems, whichever way the lyric goes. I do not know. Let's see here. Hour 13. Good Lord, that's like an hour longer than I thought that I would have been able to keep this up. I'm going to have to go down the hall. I'm going to play an intermission now so that there's no dead air or anything. But when I come back, we will pick this back up and we'll just see where the discussion takes us. 2-hour monologue, Dan. You're never going to live this down. Be back shortly. Hello. Was going to end it a little bit sooner, but Billy No Mates the cat decided he wanted to swarm the office and demand cat treats, and then knocked the container out of my hand and scattered them all over the floor. And I just looked at him and go, okay, you clean up the mess, you greedy gut. That's the last of them I've got back here. I'll have to get some more from your mama later. Uh, Go ahead, eat. You're starving to death. It's not like you haven't had 3 cats worth of food today. Uh, Sorry about that, folks. Let me go back to the comments here. Uh, yeah, I haven't heard that piece of music in years. Uh, don't usually get a chance to use my little intermission break. I wonder if I've ever put that on an album. I don't remember anybody ever playing it on one of the shows that used my music. But, hmm, I'll have to pull up the movie file and see exactly where that recording is. I might actually have it saved somewhere and can use it somehow. I don't know. It's about time I did another album. Actually, it's been a while, but I've got a lot of stories that I need to finish writing. That's one difficulty with being a dilettante as I am. I'm fairly decent at a lot of things, but I'm so easily sidetracked to something else. Um, I got a story that I'm looking forward to finishing, mostly because I would like to do an oil painting that relates to the story and turn it into my publisher as possible cover art. And if he doesn't want it, the cover art or the story, I'll uh, I'll hire Carl and Donna to edit it for me, and we'll throw that bugger up on Lulu. No big deal. There are always alternatives. Can't let yourself think that you are without choices. There are always choices. In some situations, there's not a really good choice. It's having to choose the best of a bunch of bad choices. But most of the time, there are really good choices available to you. There's all kinds of treats over there. You're the one that knocked them all over the room. I don't want Lindsay to be fussing at me when she comes in to vacuum and what is all this cat food all over the floor? Uh, it's a really pretty cat. I really love the cat a lot, but he's annoying as all get out. And now he's just kind of laying on the floor in a little puddle, going, "Oh, Daddy, I love you. You gave me food." You should be in bed. You really should, cat. You really should. Life can get strange. Life can present you with a whole lot of challenges you really wish it didn't. But facing those challenges and possibly overcoming them it strengthens your character. It makes you a better person. Uh, really, life is a series of making the best choice from a bunch of difficult choices, some of which are not really good ones, and some of which are hopefully better, and some of which you just have to go, how do I do the least amount of harm here? Those are the ones that you agonize about. Uh, it's really the ones you don't want to have to make any choice whatsoever. You wish you weren't in that situation, and there's no good way out. I think that's something that it occurs to you when you are beginning to leave childhood behind. Usually somewhere in your mid 30s. No, that was not sarcastic. It was basically maturity is a long process, and you got to go through a lot of stuff in order to get there. Some people seem to have a charmed life where those speed bumps and roadblocks and stumbling blocks and missing stairs, and yes, I know what all of those words mean, they just don't seem to exist for them. Well, yeah. If they're permitted, pre- presented with an emergency, hopefully they picked up enough stuff along the way where they can cope with it. Um, Almost every emergency I've been faced with has been really difficult, even when it's simple stuff I've had training for, like using a fire extinguisher or uh, calling 911 when you see somebody fall down a flight of stairs. You know what to do, you do it, and it's hopefully enough. There are extreme situations. The 9/11 boat lift. If you haven't watched those videos on YouTube, you really owe it to yourself to. It'll renew your faith in humanity. People were running in fear for their life. the Trade Center towers were collapsing. New York looked like a war zone. And a lot of people finally discovered that Manhattan is an island. And a call went out over the radio. Anybody with any kind of boat, help us get these people off the island. There's no organization, no training, no nothing. Hundreds of people with boats of all sizes showed up, overloaded their boats to capacity and beyond, and within, I think it was 9 hours, several 100,000 people had been evacuated from Manhattan. Was more people in less time than evacuating the soldiers from Dunkirk. Just amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Put a lump in your throat anytime that you see those videos. The plane crash on the Hudson River and how many people came together to rescue those folks. Ordinary people that got together to search for missing hikers all over, and not just the mountains, but out in the desert or wherever. It's happened time and time and time again. Sometimes you get your nose rubbed in how self-centered and venial, yes, that's the right word. I said it correctly. That people can be. How much they're out for themselves or out for a quick buck and whatever. And then something bad happens. And ordinary people pull together and go do whatever it is they can. Even if it's no more than making sandwiches and coffee for the emergency workers. And you just see there's this potential for good that's much wider and deeper and stronger than our potential for self-centered, self-serving garbage. Oh, and now you've decided you want it back out of the door. Okay, cat. Fickle, aren't you? Excuse me, folks. Billy No Mates is a beautiful cat. He is very affectionate, but he is a major pain sometimes. All right. I don't know that I can do this for another 30 minutes or that I should. beginning to feel like I am pontificating rather than carrying on a conversation. So I'm going to go down here and play a couple of, well, I'm going to play one advert, and then I'm just going to end the show because, uh, it's been fun. Y'all have helped make it possible with your commentary, and I've just kind of rambled on as if I had something meaningful to say, and yeah, I probably did say a couple of things that were quite insightful and meaningful instead of just babbling. But now I've reached the point where I think I'm starting to babble. So let's just bring it to a close at this point. And I will see you in chats on other people's shows. And most likely next Thursday and next Saturday on the regular Stupid O'Clock Last Man Standing stuff. But, until then, oh, thank you, Nick. I am surprised that I was able to keep it on the rails this far. But thank you very much. I enjoyed it too, but I think I'm going to. I don't think I'm feeling another half hour. Basically, man, got to know his limits. I'm beginning to sound like my autobiography, and believe me, the world is not ready for midnight on the tractor of introspection quite yet. But one day. But on that note, thank you everybody that was here. Thank you everybody that tuned in. Thank you everybody that will watch this on the replay later on. And I'm going to call it a night. And we'll just reconvene at a later date. And quite possibly in several other venues along the way. Bless y'all, and have a great night or great Sunday morning, and go good, guys. Hello, I'm Dan Hollifield. I'm the senior editor and publisher of Aphelion Webzine, the world's oldest free creative writing e-zine since 1997. Since then, we have helped over 500 amateur writers learn what they needed to turn pro. www.aphelion-webzine.com and read not only what we've got going on right now, but 28 years worth of our archives of stories. Thank you very much.
Transmission overload.
System will shut down. System will shut down.